now about to go deep with Dan Good.
Natalie Gonzales Hills,
Hello.
aka the Filipino, right?
That was my MMA name.
Oh, was it?
And then for Muay Thai, now it's Nat Thrills Hills. But
Nat Thrills Hills. Yeah, that's your Instagram handle, right?
Yeah.
There you go, guys, straight off the bat.
Nat will be fine.
That's fine?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I saw it. I honestly didn't even think you're Filipino. I didn't know.
Oh, no.
Well, we only met once in an
Yeah.
audition and we got paired up together.
That was hilarious.
Yes. It was your first in-person audition, was it?
Yeah. What I like/hate most about that is that you asked me straight afterwards, was that your first audition? Which probably is why I didn't get a call back. But
Hey,
yeah.
I didn't get a call back either, so and that definitely wasn't my first.
Yeah, well, that makes me feel a little bit better. Thanks for that.
Oh, it was more, I think you were curious and you asked questions. That's why I knew straight away. I was like, oh, okay, this is your first, few auditions, a little green.
Yeah, for sure.
It's
a lot
bit
of green.
to take in, yeah.
Well, what was funny about that is when you're new to the industry, and I was like such a try hard, when you get the interview details through, I was like reading into the character. Oh, it says Spanish. So I've dressed up, tried to look a little bit Spanish.
Yeah.
And I've worn this top that was just off the shoulder. And the first time I've gone in, they do the full length and then they shoot, your headshot.
Yeah.
And the guy, this is a massive learning curve. He was sort of like, what do you see? He showed me the image back and I was like, well, it's pretty bright. And he's like, you look naked. I was like, sorry? And he's like, well, they're going to ask me where your clothes are. We're shooting from here and it doesn't look like you're wearing clothes.
Yeah.
He's like, just for next time, make sure you wear, a t-shirt or something. I was like, okay. Note taken.
That's funny. Yeah, I think it was Joey Vieira. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's hilarious. Yeah. I didn't even think of that until you mentioned it before we started. I was like, yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
I mean, you do have to watch your wardrobe. They say don't wear stripes is the number one thing because it blurs the camera and things like that. But yeah, that's a new one. I mean, I guess as guys, we don't wear halter tops unless we're playing some sort of interesting role. So
yeah.
That's funny. But yeah. No, you did good. You did a good job.
You did too. We're miming gardening. That's kind of a bizarre thing to do. It was very
bizarre, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I knew because I tried to do something like ad lib, in the last take we did, play along with you, and you didn't really notice what I was doing. And it just looked hilarious. Yeah, that was funny. But I think that might have actually been why I asked if it was your first time. Yeah. But they're weird. That's so strange to do when you're miming away like that. It just feels so unrealistic.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're an actor, so you got to try and do these things. But it just feels weird doing those auditions. I know without any props or without anything to actually do.
Yeah.
It's a strange scenario. And they'll try and throw you curveballs and just throw you off completely, with what you're doing. You're like, well, aren't we doing this, flight attendant commercial and you're trying to tell me to do gardening? You're like, how does this work?
It was bizarre. And I've had such weirder calls since then. But yeah, that was it. And then the storylines they give you too, they're like, just pretend to be gardening and, your imaginary child is chasing a bee and you're like, do I look for the child?
Do I look for the bees? Are you allergic? What's the background here?
Yeah, exactly. You just try and create content. They're like, that's enough. We don't need that.
Yeah, we don't need any more.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're in fight camp right now?
I am. So I'm pretty excited because, since COVID, anyone that's been competing, performing, working, has had a lot of changes thrown at them just because of the climate that we're currently in, right? But my career this year's kind of taken a massive change, and I've got into boxing. And that wasn't planned at all.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited because I have a rematch and it's in 3 weeks. So it's the first fight was on the Tim Zoo undercard back in June, I think it was.
Yeah.
And I was given 12 days notice because there was a girl from New Zealand who was meant to fight for the Australasian title, and she couldn't get in because of COVID or something had happened. And so they asked me to step in on 12 days notice. I never boxed before.
Yeah.
And it went 6 rounds and it was a split decision, but it's very controversial because there were some articles online and some people that I spoke to, obviously not to have an echo chamber, but people I spoke to think I won.
Yeah.
And the articles online, I've had some really good feedback, people, saying it was more on my side of things.
Yeah.
I would say 5 rounds to 1 out of 6. But got a chance to actually take the belt home this time. So in 3 weeks, I'll be fighting in Newcastle on the Gallen undercard.
Oh, so you get big pay-per-view.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it'll be on the pay-per-view, might just be for the main.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
But yeah, I'd be happy to be fighting, to have a second chance at the Australasian title.
That's amazing.
On my second boxing fight. So it's a pretty big opportunity.
That's what I thought. Like, obviously, I'd followed you a bit and saw that, you're into a lot of Muay Thai and you've done MMA before, and then you were just thrown in the ring to boxing. I was like, oh, this is interesting. And I was like, Australian title, what the? Australasian. Okay, so that's Australian and New Zealand, right? And there's some.
I was like, Australian Asian, like whatever. I'll take it all. No, it's just a crazy opportunity that's come up, and we've just decided to take it, and to have a rematch is amazing.
Yeah, so, that's really good. And like you said, it was a very close fight before. I've watched some of the footage that's going around of it, and I definitely, as I said to you on Instagram, right, I feel like you were really getting the better of her, and you're getting a lot of really good strikes. And and I was surprised at the result, but these things, I mean, like they say, it's the same in any mixed martial art or any fighting. Really, if you want to beat the champ, you got to really take it away from the champ, right? On the scorecard sometimes. But
so it's vacant. It was vacant. So she didn't. She doesn't hold it. So she was fighting for it for the first time.
Okay.
But what was explained to me, and so being a Muay Thai fighter, there's so much that I couldn't fully incorporate or work on 12 days notice, but obviously having a full camp, I should hopefully look and be more like a boxer this time.
Yeah.
But the thing that it was explained to me from the boxing community and the refs and things is that they thought my punches were landing on the gloves. So she was given a lot of scores for her defense.
Yeah.
So even though I had high volume, and I mean, I had bruised knuckles, I know they were getting through.
Yeah, there was a lot of power shots in there that I saw anyway.
Yeah, thank you for that. But so to not give them any chance to say otherwise, I've had to work on, my boxing skills over the past, 7 weeks or whatever. I've had a lot more notice this time, although I've only just been able to announce it. So with a full camp, I hopefully look like a different fighter, and just make sure that those punches get through her guard.
Well, that's, were you working a lot more on your footwork and your head movement as well, like technique-wise, to sort of throw her off a little bit in that regard? Because what I saw, you were going straight for her, right? Like attack, when you were actually, swinging at her, right? And you're like, oh, wow, you can see that you fight in a different discipline as well, the way, the style, and the volume, Yeah, Muay
Thai is like that. Yeah. So, I mean, I fought MMA, and you've got such a variety of ways the fight can go. And I'm a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. So, you might go to the ground, you can stand up, do whatever. But with Muay Thai, I think I have had more success in Muay Thai because for me, I don't have to overthink it. It's just my style is as a forward fighter is very aggressive.
Yeah.
And so I just keep coming forward. So it's very natural for me to do that.
Yeah.
So when I went into boxing, obviously I'm going to stalk her down and throw as many punches at her as I can. But this time around, I have definitely been working on my footwork and head movement and not being so, although, it did serve me well last time.
Exactly,
Yeah.
You still get points on the card. I mean, you got to have scoring shots, right? Unless you're a full-blown knockout puncher like, someone like Dante Wilder or whatever that relies on that right hand. That's sort of a fight style that you need to win those fights, obviously, to go to the cards, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't like to, but it's the way it goes,
Well, I've tried to do everything right this time, and I'm working with a sports scientist. So Dr. Luke Val, I would probably pronounce his name wrong. It's Italian. I'm just I'm going to skip over it. But we've been doing lots of testing, and I've been just trying to make sure I cover all aspects of the game. So I've been working on my strength. I've got amazing coaches in John Wayne Parr and Angie Parr at Boonchu Gym. Just covering everything, making sure that I really focus on the recovery side of things too.
Yeah.
So I have really, really bad sleep. I have insomnia. So
that's not ideal.
Yeah. As an athlete, you're at a massive disadvantage if you have less than 8 hours of sleep. Studies show. And I get like 4 or 5 a night.
Yeah, that's not great. Isn't it? Yeah, 6 is like kind of a vital amount, but anything 7 to 8 is optimal, right?
I have to try and catch up on the weekend, so it's pretty full on.
Are you like wearing some sort of device to measure your heart rate and all that sort of thing, or like were you getting your quality sleep in?
So I wear a Garmin now so that I can work out how many times I get get up in the night and just see what, how long I'm led down and how many times I get up, what my uninterrupted sleep is like if I do have that. And I can't have uninterrupted sleep without it being medicated. Like as a kid, I tried medications, they never worked.
Yeah.
And so as an adult, I don't bother. But sometimes when it's really bad, I'll try herbal things.
Yeah.
And I think somebody gave me some antihistamines the other day or something over the counter.
Yeah.
And I was out for like 7 hours, but that...
You feel so groggy the next day, and
I
that can't
was
be great for
really,
your training.
Really
yeah.
No, I'd have to leave it because I have clients really early too. So I have to save that stuff for the weekend if I'm going to try something new like that.
Knock yourself out.
Yeah, if I'm going to knock myself out, it's going to be the weekend. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So yeah, like, I mean, natural, like, ashwagandha and things like that can sometimes... Have you tried like
the herbal stuff I've had? It's like valerian root,
that's good,
chamomile. There's another one. The name escapes me, but just all the sleepy blends. I've tried everything. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could look at like I get CBD. You sort of... Do you take any of that for recovery and things like inflammation?
So I tried it for the first time the other day.
Yeah.
I had an oil and it tasted so gross.
Yeah.
Because you're meant to use the droplets, the dropper.
I have capsules. Like
maybe
I can
that's
show you.
better.
Yeah, like after that I get them in from America.
I get popped instead. I'm like, what was this?
Okay, that's a good point. Yeah, you have to watch that. I mean, I get it from a legit place online. Obviously, over there it's all regulated and everything like that. But technically speaking, I don't think I'm supposed to be able to get it in the country, but it comes in all the time.
I wonder if we should have a jar for this conversation. I think I've done this about 3 times already.
Yeah. So got me going now. But no, it's great stuff, especially for inflammation and injuries and stuff like that and recovery. But they have so many different blends, like with melatonin as well. So was that what you were trying to...
I was trying to remember.
It was eluding me as well until I said CBD. It got my mind on track. But they have blends like that with relaxation blends and things like that, and CBD isolate, which is just full spectrum CBD, things like that help you sleep as well, like added with melatonin and things like that. But yeah, I mean, I've got actually melatonin. You can get melatonin tablets as well. Like, is that what you've tried?
Yeah, I've had just the melatonin tablets, and I've had a blend, like a sleepy blend. Yeah, and it did work. But it kind of, what seems to happen is it works really well the first night and the second not so much. And then it's like a placebo. Someone gave them to me. I think they got it online too, because technically it's a little harder to get, I think, still. I'm not really sure, but I haven't tried. But yeah, I didn't really, I thought it was okay. It did something, but it's still, like, it's obviously not as bad as like sleeping pills and things like that, the heavier sort of with that grogginess the next day. There was a little bit there for maybe an hour or two. On the melatonin stuff, I felt still. But it's a weird thing, isn't it, to try and get. I don't think I have insomnia exactly, but I don't always sleep the greatest either. So that's why I was trying certain things at the same time. Yeah. Well, it's because I've got a hectic schedule. Unfortunately, I don't have the luxury of being a full-time fighter. Yeah. So I have a couple of days where I'm working in an office, and then I have other days when I'm working from home for myself. Yeah. But I always have to train at least twice a day. So I'm either training, I normally wake up and either train myself or train clients. Then I have my own session. If I've got a home day, I'll try and have a nap in the day. Yeah. But normally it's one of those things where, like, you lay down for like X amount of time, and just as you're feeling sleepy is when you've got to get up. Yeah. So it doesn't quite work.
I know that feeling all too well. Yeah.
And then I train in the afternoon. We have a fighters class, which is a run, all our skills development, pads and that kind of thing. And then home and sleep and rest, and pretty monotonous during fight camp. Same thing.
I mean, you have to be right to get that recovery and get the full optimum training. And so that's awesome that you've actually got a camp this time for this fight. Yeah. Who's the young lady that you're fighting?
So her name's Lynn Sandstrom.
Okay. And
she's pure boxer. Got a good boxing coach in Sydney. Yeah. I haven't really paid, not in a disrespectful way, but much attention to her.
That's fine,
But coming from another discipline, fight's a fight. And we took it the first time just going in, just thinking, I'll just train, be as prepared as I can be with 12 days notice. Yeah. And I think we did really well. And so I was stoked when I got the rematch. And this time, I'm not watching what she's doing. I'm not following her. Yeah. on any social pages because my team I trust in my training, my team, they're helping me get ready.
Yeah.
I've got to take care of all the recovery stuff and the other stuff.
Yeah.
And like I said, had the sports scientist help me with my strength programming and all the other things like, we're measuring punch power, monitoring my nutrition, monitoring my sleep and everything. So I think I'll be a different fighter going into this one.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So when you say, because you've obviously got a high output as a fighter, and I've watched some of your other fights in MMA, and obviously that works quite well as well. Is that something, so you've focused on those power punches, is that something you've focused on sort of holding back a little bit to get more power punches in, or you still think the volume sort of style is the way to get points, obviously in boxing as well, and wear your opponent down, but it also wears you down at the same time? My fight style is the same in essence, but it's changed a lot. So I guess when I was fighting MMA, I was based in Sydney and I went to America to do training. Yeah.
And my style was, I guess it was more flashy. Like I would try lots of different things.
Spinning back fists, I've seen a couple of those.
Yes, it was spinning back kicks and it was all a bit crazy. And then when I went to Muay Thai, it was like being brought down to just square one again. And they really taught me to drop all the fancy stuff and just basics. And so since I've been training with the Parrs and, John Wayne's had like hundreds of fights and a lot of KOs. And, his wife, Angie, who's really close, a friend of mine and trainer, their style is basically to be as fit as possible and to hit as hard as possible. And they really focus on basics. And then when you've got those down, obviously you throw the exciting stuff when you're winning and everything else. But since training with them, I know for a fact that my power's definitely developed.
Okay, that's good, yeah.
As my challenge as a fighter is my composure. And so I do have this tendency to fight like I see red. And I often compare myself, I probably should stop doing this, but that scene in Waterboy when he gets super angry and he's like H2O and does the rugby tackle. And he's just like, that's when I lose it. And so sometimes after fights, I've not remembered anything and I've just been like...
Because you've just blanked out and been in the zone,
Yeah, and so the hardest thing for me to do and what I've been working on the most, especially the more fights you have, the more comfortable you are. And I've now had 8 MMA, 19 Muay Thai and 1 boxing fight. So 28 fights.
Yeah.
I had a couple interclubs before I left England, but I've never actually fought in England since, so I left England, traveled, had all the experience I just talked about. It's starting, that's such a long journey, but starting to get more composed, but it's taken a very long time.
Yeah.
And I got signed early, so I was like learning on the job. So now my style, I want it to be composed and to pick those shots and be heavy, but I still have that like rugged, my style of fighting is just going in and I don't always get out of the pocket. I stay in there and I just, I'm very aggressive.
Yeah.
But that wins.
It's good to have that switch to turn on, right? And sometimes in the fights, if hypothetically, if you're down on the cards, it's a good thing to be able to turn on the latter rounds as well.
Yeah.
If you have somehow saved up your energy and your cardio a bit more and to turn that on and really wear them down, right? And go for the knockout. Yeah.
I just got to try and temper that with this composure and picking the right time to do that instead of being
hit in the face, though, right?
Exactly. But I guess that's the difference between being like reactive and then, controlling the fight.
Smart fighter, Yeah, so I mean, I guess then with boxing, obviously a lot like guys like Floyd Mayweather and things like that, they're defensive boxers, right? They used to be a bit more aggressive in the past, like you're probably talking about, and then they've learned to be defensive, and that seems to be their greatest weapon a lot of the times as well. Is that something you've sort of worked on as well? I guess with footwork and head movement and things like that, it's a little bit of a way of being defensive, right?
I find that I'm not a counter fighter. And obviously you're working on things all the time, but that kind of style irritates me. Like I know it's smart, but I feel like it's sometimes boring and not busy. And so that's just something that I need to kind of work on because everyone has their own game plan. But for me, somebody that sits back and just waits for me to come in. If I, when that's what they're doing, you can work around it. But it irritates me. That's fair. It does irritate me.
You know what you like to do then in the ring. That's a good thing. So you say you're working with John Wayne Parr. Were you, because he used to be an MMA fighter, right? Or kickboxer, was it mainly?
He's one of the best Muay Thai fighters in the world.
Okay.
Yeah. Like ever. So he's one of the first Australians to go over to Thailand and fight and beat Thais, and has some really amazing accolades. Like he could go anywhere in the world, is famous, but he's obviously had a full Muay Thai career, kickboxing and boxing. Yeah. So, I'm really lucky to have him as a trainer, and just have his input daily, because a lot of gyms, when they have, famous fighters running them, they're not necessarily working in the gym, but the gym's run by him, his wife, Angie, who's a world champion, their daughter, Jazzy, who's my training partner. And I'm so lucky right now because she also has a boxing fight. So Jazzy's going for an Australian title. I'm going for an Australasian title. And they're both a week apart from each other.
Oh, awesome.
And we're the same weight. So we're actually really good partners.
Good.
Yeah.
And it's hard to come by probably. I mean, obviously, there's a lot more female fighters now in mixed martial arts and everything. But, I'm sure when you're coming up, that was a lot harder to come by, to have a decent partner to train with.
I was always mainly the only girl in the gym. And I was originally fighting upper weight. So when I was first coming up in MMA, I was weighing on the scales at like 50 and I would fight 48 to 51, but there was no one at 50. So I'd fight at straw weight, which is 52 kilos. So these girls would cut weight. So let's say they're like, 58, 56, and they cut down to 52. Yeah. I would always be at 50. So in the beginning of MMA, it was really hard.
Yeah.
I got signed early and I had some bad losses. And I got 5 losses in a row. And that's when I went to Muay Thai, because I was like, oh man, I've got to work on my skills individually in all these areas. So I went to Muay Thai, worked on my skills there, went to BJJ, did comps, got my purple belt, and always planned to go back to MMA. But been on a different been on a different journey. But now there's so many opportunities for girls.
Yeah.
So even the UFC went from saying they'd have no girls, and then you look at Ronda Rousey, like Dana White changed his mind, and then we just had like the strawweight category and bantam, and then now you've got flyweight, and there's so many more opportunities in the UFC. But in all promotions, there's a lot of space for females now, which is great.
Yeah,
it should be.
Bellator's got like Kayla Harris and things like that, and you've got Shevchenko. She's an absolute beast.
Oh, we love her.
She's so good to watch fight. And Amanda Nunes, obviously, they're probably the greatest, one of the greatest of all time, if not the greatest.
Yeah, in UFC, but in what we're talking about, Bellator, Arlene Blenko, Aussie, she's killing it right now, knocking girls out. She's been training in America.
I've seen that on your Instagram, actually.
I share a lot of her stuff. We have, there's one of my, a couple, their sponsors and friends as well, because Forget 9 to 5, BF925. Check them out. So they make really cool merchandise, t-shirts and hoodies and things, but it's to do with supporting athletes that have been, doing what they love, their passion, be fighting or, whatever it might be, but they have to have a job to fund it. And it's just kind of giving a bit more of, exposure to those fighters that like do it all until they, make it. But it's just more about the lifestyle than, money or anything like that. And just making it okay.
So was it B952?
Because Forget 9 to 5, so it's BF925.
BF925. Okay.
Yeah, because when I first heard from them, I was like, I thought it was because fuck 9 to 5. And I was
that's
like,
what I thought you were going towards.
I was like, well, it still works. You just do.
There's a good marketing gimmick behind that anyway.
Yeah, do what you can until your passion takes over.
I think a lot of people can relate to that one.
100%. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Also, okay, first starting out then, let's take it back a little bit because I saw you said you got signed. Is that to One Championship?
Yeah.
Because I saw that and I thought, wow, that's pretty awesome. That's a Asian Fight League, right? But worldwide. But is it? Is it Japanese or not?
They're based in Singapore. One Championship is the biggest sports media property in Asia.
Okay.
So they were really smart. So if we think about the UFC's already established, when One Championship was growing, they've reached out to fighters in their native countries and they've really grown it from like a grassroots level.
Awesome,
so you've given a spotlight on these authentic martial arts and brought these fighters up through the rank. Like they've got like, you know, they do the UFC Ultimate Fighter and the Contender. They've got their version, which is like, I think it's Warrior something. But they've gone to different countries and found, you know,
talent. And, brought them on,
but yeah, Myanmar, Thailand, you know, just all countries throughout Asia, Philippines. What I loved about the opportunities I've had with One Championship, because I got a 6-fight contract and it broke my heart that I actually lost 3 out of the 6 fights that I had with them. But I had really, really tough matches. So my first fight for them was against Angela Lee.
I watched that.
Yeah, in her hometown, in a stadium full of 20,000 people.
You could tell the crowd,
Yeah.
Because they were quiet at the start because you were taking it to her early on.
Yeah.
There's a lot of striking and a lot of volume, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, is she black belt jiu-jitsu at the
Very
time?
good grappler.
Yeah.
So she's kind of like the Parrs that I train with. They've got 3 children. They would have been brought up in the sport in Muay Thai. Angela Lee is part of the Lee family, where she's got brothers and sisters. The parents were Hapkido practitioners. They would have brought her up from an early age in the gym too. And so she's an absolute beast grappling. I would say she's a black belt, but I'm not too sure actually. And she got me in a really rare move, which is the twister.
I know,
so it started off well, and you can hear the commentators being like, I don't know if Nat should have taken her to the ground. Blah, blah. Yeah, shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Well, it kind of went that way, didn't it? And you went with the momentum of where the fight was going.
I took it down and I was like, could I finish her a ground and pound? Went for it.
Because that's what you tried to do, yeah.
Anyways, I'm now on a highlight reel, which has been, I don't know, shared how many times. And what's really annoying, because people that I've met through Muay Thai, and sorry if people have done this and they're cringing now when I talk about it, but because One Championship's huge, and they met me from Muay Thai, they don't know that I had an MMA career. So when anybody sees it for the first time, they either message me and say, is this you? Or they tag me and be like, oh my God, Nat. And it's like, I was there.
And you have to relive it every
time. I have to relive it, yeah. And what makes it worse is they also did a breakdown. So the team she's from is called Evolve University.
Yeah.
And they did a breakdown where they put it in slow-mo and they did little red circles around every mistake I made.
Just to break it down further.
I was like, that's very educational. Thank you for making me better.
Yeah.
Just go cry in the shower.
What else can you say to that? Yeah.
Yeah. But no, it's okay. I'm over it.
Clearly.
So, it's one of those things. So that was the first fight. That was in Singapore. And then as a Filipino, I'm half Filipino, I'm Filipino. I was born in the Philippines, raised in England. To be able to go fight in the Philippines and see all my relatives and obviously represent my Filipino side is really important to me. And I had a couple fights there too, which was amazing. So I was based in Sydney, and when I got booked by One, I would fly to Singapore, Philippines, and you'd be there a bit before for the fight week, and it was an amazing experience. I was really hoping that I got a chance to have the last 3 fights on my contract to turn it around. So what I actually did when I was in Sydney is quit my job, take all my money from my business, and went to America in the hopes of having like this superstar training camp that would turn my career around. And I went to America, had an amazing camp, and then lost a fight by decision and broke my orbital. Then when I came back to Sydney, I had to start all over again. I went back to America and I was waiting for a fight, but I basically didn't get that fight and was, I guess you could say, shelved or not given the remaining fights on my contract. But it is what it is. I didn't perform, but it was a really good experience. And so I had to kind of, reassess. And that's when I decided to work on everything individually, go back to basics, and then rebuild when I had a bit more experience. Because when I got signed to One, I was in losses for MMA. So I think I won my first 3 and then I lost 5 in a row. Then I went to Muay Thai and won 9 fights in a row. So I went from like the lowest low to a high, and then started winning championships too. And then was just super happy. It changed my life. So, yeah.
What championships were you? I saw you're former champion, a couple of different belts, right?
Well, there's so many different promotions, but the easiest way to sort of think about it is there's nationals for Muay Thai.
Yep.
There's states, there's nationals. Every show that is put on might have their own show belts. And then there's different organizations, and some are more prestigious than others, which have belts. So if you wanted a world title, say, you could win states, go to nationals, and then get selected as the Australian team to go to worlds.
Yeah.
I've won states twice, won nationals twice. And one time I didn't have funding to go to worlds. And the second time, because of COVID, I couldn't go.
Oh, no.
Then I've won a state belt, like a WKBF belt, Queensland. So I'm a Queensland champ, WKBF, and I'm an East Coast champ, also WKBF. I had nearly had the chance to fight for a, I'm forgetting all of the names of the different promotions for a belt. And then because of COVID, it didn't happen. So yeah, there's all these different organizations. And when you want to progress throughout your career, you obviously want to get state, national, Australian, and then, if you can get abroad, or, you want to progress in your career, you want to get a world belt. There's different routes, but it just depends what shows you're fighting on and what organizations they're paired with. To sort of work their way up. Yeah,
that's cool. So I know, so you said you went to America to train. I'm sure I saw something on your Instagram you trained at the Cowboys ranch. Is that right?
That was like the best experience of my life.
So for the people who don't know, Cowboy is a veteran in the UFC, Donald Cerrone.
Yeah.
And he's a bit of an adrenaline junkie as well. So I'm sure that was a very fun time.
Yeah, it was part of my trip to America. When I went, I was thinking, how am I going to turn my career around? I need to be training with girls or professional fighters, because I had a really good team in Sydney, but to get to the next level, I needed to surround myself with other fighters. And in my gym, there were no other girls my weight fighting. Yeah. And at Jackson's MMA, when I went there, it was bizarre because it's such a established gym. All these other girls that had maybe been through the same thing as me, we had this magical first trip where like everybody was the same weight. So I'd step onto the mats and I was fighting at 48 to 52, and there was 12 girls.
Wow.
So can you imagine the depth? Like you go, your training partners, your sparring partners, you've got, rather than being one girl mismatched with men, like guys all different weights, or you get matched with teenagers, or, you're actually with girls and women, like your actual same weight. Yeah. And, it just made the training so much more competitive.
Yeah.
And so that was really useful. So when I went to America the first time, I was in New Mexico, which is where they shot Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. Albuquerque or
Albuquerque. Yeah. So I mean, if you're going to pick a destination somewhere to go, apart from the Sandia crest, the mountains, and like the beautiful landscape, maybe Albuquerque's not like the first place you're going to go to.
Yeah.
And if you've watched Breaking Bad, you'll like probably have like an image.
Yeah, I haven't really. I've watched a little bit. I think I saw the movie. I didn't actually get into the series, but yeah.
Yeah, well, the first night, this is no joke, that I was landed in Albuquerque, I had the window open and I could hear the police with a megaphone talking to somebody in the house who'd been taken hostage. And there was helicopters above, and they were like monitoring this hostage situation, like a house, like a couple doors down.
Yeah.
And it was on TV, and I could hear it through my window in the dorms. And so it was like a really interesting neighborhood. But we were in this little bubble because we were just there for the gym, and all these people from all over the world were there. And just amazing coaches, like amazing fighters like John Jones, Holly Holmes, Michelle Waterson, who I idolized. Like I followed her career in Fight Girls when she was fighting Muay Thai to the UFC. And then Cowboy's been my all-time favorite fighter since when he used to fight in WEC, and I saw him fight you know, even back then, I just loved his style of fighting.
Yeah.
I wanted to be that sort of, you know, fast paced and aggressive. And it was on my second visit that he was building the BMF ranch, and I ended up living at his for 6 weeks. So when I was at Jackson's, I'd met people my first trip, and when I went back the second time to try and, you know, rebuild after that third loss in one championship, I remember we were, I don't know, what were we doing? We were probably just after sparring one day, I think, because he's sponsored by Malibu Boats. That quite often he's just a super nice down to earth guy. He'd take a lot of like the dorm guys out on the lake, and you know, you do like wakeboarding and that kind of thing. And just on the drive one day he said like, oh, you know, you're welcome to stay at the ranch. And I thought he was joking. I was like, yeah, whatever. And he's like, no, seriously.
Yeah.
You know, I'm in camp. He was in camp to fight Darren Till, which is a huge fight. And so to be at the ranch while he was getting ready for Darren Till, to have access to like, you know, his coaches. And it wasn't just me, it was some other fighters as well, all up and comers. We were like taking notes. So he had Joe Schilling, who's an amazing kickboxer.
Yeah.
There. He had Izzy, who's an amazing wrestling coach. He was in, I don't know if you saw the UFC recently, the Max Holloway fight.
Yeah, of course.
Which so Rodrigo, Rodriguez in his corner. And then Pedro Camberos, who's the padman for as well. I met them all when I was at Cowboys. And so it was just an awesome experience. And it just sort of showed me like what you can do through the sport. So if you become really successful, like all the things he loves to do, he's sponsored by those things, like Budweiser, Malibu Boats, you know, Monster. And then when it's time to fight, he flies all of his friends and the best coaches from, you know, his different disciplines, like wrestling coach, BJJ coach, but they're like obviously people he rates, flies them in, and they'll live with him for 2 to 3 months. But the thing I love the most as well is that I ride a motorbike now. But when I was there, they all ride Harleys. And so have you ever seen this film called Wild Hogs?
Wild Hogs. Possibly.
So when I was at the ranch, quite often they'll go for a ride and they'd like have a beer. And there's this one spot, what was it called? It wasn't called Miami. It was called, I wish I could remember the name. But it's in the film Wild Hogs. And it's just a really cool drive just out to this little like countryside bar. But yeah, they'd go have a beer and then go back and start training. And I was like trying to keep up. So we go for a ride. I'd have like a bud, and then they'd be like, right, time to hit pads. And I'd be like, you're kidding, right? Like,
after that,
but you just kind of had to like just keep up. Yeah. And
when you're in that environment, aren't you? So it's just like kind of like, okay, well, I'm in here now, so I might as well roll with it.
Yeah. And just things like we'd go sparring, and then he'd go and do his swimming conditioning. And I was like, oh, I haven't actually swam in a while. And they're like, bah! And then they would do these dive sprints where they'd dive off the board and they'd sprint and then get out the other end, dive back in, sprint. And like 4 laps was like 1.
Yeah.
I remember like just trying not to drown, like the first time we'd done it after sparring. But you know, after
especially your arms are like feeling a little bit weak, and then you got to swim properly.
Well, you just raise to the level that you've thrown in at. So I was lucky to survive. And the saddest thing is, like, after all that training with Cowboy, then he flew out to fight Darren Till. I was like, I'm ready to go, and then I didn't get matched. So I had all of this momentum, all this amazing training, was like ready to turn my record around, and then didn't get a match and went back to Sydney. And that really sucked, because I'd like spent all of my money trying to like give myself like one perfect camp to like get everything going again. And it just didn't happen. But in a lot of ways it was really good, because when I came back, I started from square one, and it, you know, made the right changes. So
that was when you were still signed to 1, is that right? Yeah. So you're hoping for that next match, Yeah. And I guess so. It's obviously helpful to be in America when that happens, or were you in Australia as well when you were going to fights still for 1 championship?
So 1 have fighters all over the world. So wherever I was, they would have flown me to fight.
Okay.
But it was helpful for me to be in America because of the training. So I was always training with fighters, and that was the main difference. Is just that back in Sydney, unfortunately, there were really good training and partners and fighters. But in terms of the girls team, like you couldn't beat jumping on the mat with 12 people.
Yeah.
And then how often have you got, I mean, I had Michelle Waterson and Jodie Escobar and some really amazing fighters that have had 20 plus professional fights to train with them and help them with their camps. I mean, I remember for Michelle, she was fighting Rose Namajunas.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, okay, we're going to do some drills, pretend to be Rose. It's like, what?
Big kick.
Yeah. I actually did get knocked out by Michelle in one training session.
Yeah.
So I survived the first 2 months and then I went back for 3 months the second time. It was just towards the end of the 3 months. They were drilling something. I knew something was coming and she took a step forward and switch kicked and I went out. Like it was like a flash knockout.
Yeah.
But I woke up kind of angry and like wanted to carry on the round.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I actually didn't care because she's like my idol.
Yeah,
so
it's a story to have, right?
It's just like, yeah. But it was good. I just didn't train for like a couple of weeks afterwards and just recovered and actually used the last 2 weeks to explore Albuquerque and like the surrounding areas. And yeah.
So it was a great experience nevertheless.
Yeah, it was so good. And they had, apart from Sandia Crescent in the mountains, there were these springs and falls and, lots of natural stuff to look at as well. Santa Fe was close by and I made friends with a girl called Nikki who shared a lot about her culture with me. And so she would show me a lot of like the Native American culture while I was there. So I ate buffalo. I went to some art exhibitions, for nature walks and kind of learned about her culture and stuff. And that was really cool too.
Yeah, that would have been so cool.
Yeah.
Buffalo's delicious as well.
Oh, it was so good. Never had it before. And then, it was, amazing.
Yeah, I had it once when I went to America there. Buffalo burger. It was probably the best thing that I ate when I was there.
Yeah.
Buffalo burger and blue cheese. It was just
I don't
an
doubt
amazing combination. Like I've out of everything, every place, like expensive restaurant and stuff that we went to, just like that, I remember the most.
Give me the buffalo.
Oh, it's delicious. I dream about it all the time.
Oh, it's so, that's the last time I've had buffalo and it was the best. I mean, I know Joe Rogan always talks about elk. I've never tried that. But it was so good. And another thing that I loved about America, and I went to New York. I stayed in Queens before I was training. This was like a leisure holiday. And then when I went back, I got the bug for chicken wings. So I would have that everywhere. Buffalo is my thing. Buffalo wings.
Buffalo chicken wings?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. With the buffalo sauce? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's just when it's spicy hot.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I mean, they do them over here as well, right? But does it even taste
I can tell some are good and then not some aren't so good. I would consider myself a connoisseur. I probably had wings
a buffalo
everywhere.
Wing connoisseur.
Yeah, and it's weird because I actually tried to go vegan last year, but I needed a transfusion, and I tried to do it all right. I had like all the vitamins and stuff, but I think I just need meat.
So what? That must have been. How did you find it? Obviously, fighting and things like that, or were you training and didn't actually have a fight at that time, or?
So, I was vegetarian from the age of 8 to 18, so for 10 years when I was younger. And then I had a growth spurt. I grew 3 inches when I started eating meat. And so I just kind of ate meat because I thought it was good for me. Yeah. But then I got this real like aversion to it. And I don't really know why it started. So I decided to go vegan for 3 months to see how it affected my training. And I felt like I had loads of energy and I felt clean. Yeah. So I was like, oh, this is all right. And, stuck it out for a bit. And then in the second month, I was training for nationals, the second nationals that I did. My body wouldn't recover and I started to crash. And I ended up having a blood transfusion like a day before I had to compete because I couldn't, I normally fight in 48 to 51. And my body was like, I was plateauing. Like, even though I was training really hard, I hadn't lost any weight. I wasn't really eating much as well. Yeah. It was bizarre. So I had to just go up a category. And I fought in would have been like 52 to 54, which is big for me. Yeah. Like I have never competed in that before. But I still won, which was great. Wow. But I had to have a transfusion. So I haven't tried since then.
Yeah.
I think everybody's different.
Yeah.
Maybe if I had like a nutritionist and dietitian, it might have been all right. it might have been safer and better. But I still had done all my own research and was taking, B12 and everything. So I'm not sure where it went wrong, but it didn't work for me.
Yeah. Blood transfusion is pretty heavy.
Yeah.
To have done, yeah. I can see why you wouldn't want to try it again, though, exactly either.
No.
But yeah, I mean, so you feel good about your diet and everything that you're doing now, for yourself, yeah? Yeah,
so my friend, she, funnily enough, we're training partners, and then she became one of my personal training clients, and she lost like 22 kilos.
Wow.
And she was cooking, and now she does a lot of food plans for fighters. So it's gone full circle. So I was her PT, and she lost a bunch of weight, and now she makes food plans and does meal prep.
Yeah.
And she's been making my food for like maybe a year or two now. And so my lunch and dinner is always sorted. So my nutrition's good.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So I don't have to worry about
it. To worry about cooking and things like that on top of everything else after a massive day. It's just it's a bit of a nightmare sometimes. Yeah.
I do love cooking, but for just performance wise and time efficiency, everything else, it's and her food's amazing. So it's for the love of time. If anybody wants to check it out,
there you go, a little plug.
Yeah.
Is that Gold Coast?
Gold Coast. Yeah.
So you said you were in Sydney originally. Is that where your family was at the time, and you came to Queensland? Or?
No, so I'm a bit of a nomad. I left the UK and went on this round the world trip, and I was meant to go to South America and end up in America.
Yeah.
And my dream was like, I'll be in the UFC by then. And what happened was, after Thailand, I came to Australia, was only meant to be here 3 months, and actually met someone.
Yeah.
And ended up settling in Sydney for about 5 or 6 years. So that was my springboard. So I was training in Sydney and competing and fighting abroad.
Yeah.
And I only came up to Queensland when I went into Muay Thai. I'd met the Parrs, and on public holidays, I would fly up to the Gold Coast just to get some Muay Thai training in, just because obviously admiring them, and it was good training, just train with them on their normal schedule for maybe a few days, and then go back to Sydney. And then when I went into Muay Thai, to compete in nationals, your gym has to be registered.
Yeah.
And my gym in Sydney wasn't registered. So I've been keeping in touch with Angie online. And she's American, but she has a Mexican background. And when I was in New Mexico, we kind of bonded over food and just some, similarities of things. And she invited me to come and train at Boonchu. So from Sydney, I was driving 10 hours.
Oh, no.
Every time she booked me a fight.
Yeah.
But what happened the first time was she let me fight. And I was actually pretty amazed when this happened. I wanted to compete in nationals, but my gym wasn't registered. She let me compete under Boonchu the first time.
Yeah.
Which is kind of not a risk, but like bearing in mind I'd represent her gym and I hadn't been training with her.
She must have thought quite highly of you to do that, yeah.
I don't know what she thinks about it. But whatever it was, pressure having John Wayne Parr in my corner for my first fight back to Muay Thai, but I won nationals. So I'd been training MMA in the States, came back, went into Muay Thai after, because I had a couple fights a couple years prior. Oh, actually, no, sorry. So I'd had a couple fights in Muay Thai in 2012 before my MMA career. Then I just did MMA.
Yeah.
And then in 2018, I won the nationals. So I hadn't fought Muay Thai in about 6 years. First fight back was representing Boonchu and with John Wayne Parr in my corner. And won nationals. And because of that, I was like, oh, this is just such a good vibe, connection, whatever. I was driving 10 hours to train with Angie every time I had a Muay Thai fight booked. And after a year of doing that, I actually just moved to the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's tough. Yeah, 10 hours, like so you would train for like a weekend or fight camp?
Fight camp.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense, yeah.
What happened was, and I think you probably, a life experience, but you would know from your guests and just people you've met through acting and things, I think, that when you have to go all in. So there comes a point where you can't do a 9 to 5. If you want to get to the next level, you have to take a risk.
Yeah.
And so what happened to me after America was I could have gone into a 9 to 5 and been stuck in Sydney, or I basically started temping, didn't have a set location or set job, and just whichever state I was in, I would temp and I would fight.
Yeah.
And it was pretty crazy. So if I had a fight booked in Queensland, I would put all my stuff in the car. My friend that I was living with in Sydney let me keep my stuff there. So I ended up almost like a crazy auntie that got divorced. I was like renting a room from a friend, and whenever I went away, she just let me keep my stuff at her house, which was amazing because it allowed me to go to America and train in the Gold Coast before my move. So that was, just so nice of her to do. But yeah, pack my car up. I would drive to Queensland, and I actually stayed with the Parrs for a fight camp. So I would be there for 4 to 8 weeks. And then after the fight, I would drive back to Sydney, get on the temping books for Sydney, and just did that back and forth. So yeah, it was crazy. But I find like when you're doing something for the right motives, you have that good energy, you tend to attract the right people.
Good things coming up,
Yeah, and I was so lucky that when I was up on the Gold Coast initially, the Parrs were really welcoming. I ended up, training at Boonchu, but then working a bit for Angie. So she's got 3 kids, and I'd like help with the kids and do a bit of nannying and doing a bit of working in the gym. And it just all worked out. But it was definitely a bit of a juggle, and it was a massive risk because if you imagine like a 9 to 5 job in Sydney, you got the security. I was working in accounts, it's quite good pay. And I came up to the Gold Coast. It was a massive hit in terms of pay and everything else. It was pretty full on.
And it's also like a hard thing when you're trying to focus on fighting and everything and training. You don't want to have to figure out where your next paychecks are coming from or what you're working on and things like that. But as you say, you took the risk and it's paying off, and you've got, it's like that natural progression, like you wanted to be in the UFC and things like that. And now all of a sudden now you're boxing as your main focus, right? Do you think you're going to go back anything to MMA, or you still take MMA fights, or are you just solely training boxing now?
Oh, I want to. But it's been a bit of a test because I actually pre-shoulder surgery. So a cliff jumping accident gone wrong. I hurt my shoulder and never fixed it. And then just years of training, I've got a tear. I've got a labrum tear. So I need a slap repair. And my shoulder's actually torn. So when I was getting ready for my last title fight, in the depths of COVID, at that time when everything kept getting postponed and, I was getting ready for a boxing fight and a Muay Thai fight. And so I was hitting pads in the morning for boxing. And then I was going to the gym and hitting pads in the night for Muay Thai. And I was training so hard, and I'd recently injured my shoulder in BJJ that whatever I did in BJJ had made it so inflamed that I had a bleeding cyst in the socket, a torn labrum, and like hemorrhaging, and just the worst. Like there was nothing that showed on the ultrasound, and the MRI came back and it was ridiculous. So I had to have a full 5 months off, and I thought I actually might have to retire.
Yeah.
So I couldn't take any fights. I focused on coaching. I was like trying to get these backup plans going. I was like, I did not expect this. Like, what if I have to have surgery? It's a year off. And then I'm going to be in my 30s fighting because of my weight. I'm fighting against 18-year-olds. I was like, do I really want this? Like, this is going to be crazy. And what actually happened was my rehab went really well. And I've had 2 really big fights this year. I was a main event on an MMA card, but a Muay Thai fight. So it was in a cage, pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And then I had I was on the pay-per-view for the Australasian title. So it was a full recovery. And, that surgery will need to happen at some point. But, at the moment, everything else around it is so strong, it's keeping it in the right position.
I say so it doesn't hinder you at all. Like you feel...
I won't go into too many specifics.
Yeah, good. I would.
But
I was going to say that. There
are certain things that trigger it. And right now I know that Muay Thai and boxing is safe, and I would love to go back to MMA. And you never know what might happen. But there are certain things that need to be stable, and I need to be able to get through an MMA training camp to have an MMA fight.
Yeah.
And I actually can't and don't risk a shoulder injury by practicing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu when I have a fight booked. So what I've done in the past is do everything.
Yeah. And
then if I've got a boxing fight, in the limited time I've got to get ready for that fight, it doesn't really do me any justice, or it doesn't help me at all to be straining my shoulder in positions that
I could imagine it's the worst thing possible for it. Your whole body, if not your shoulder and your arms, are getting bent
cranked
everywhere.
And pretzeled. It doesn't help me for boxing. So what seems to happen is I keep getting Muay Thai and boxing fights, and then I'm not consistently training wrestling and BJJ. And so the MMA is always just kind of gets pushed back.
Yeah.
So eventually I'm hoping to have a full camp, because it's not like you forget it. And I do try and do something like once a week to keep it fresh. But, it's not, you want to be a complete fighter.
Yeah.
And, I've still got takedown defense, but I'd be winging it until you have a full MMA camp.
Yeah.
I'd be ready for Muay Thai and boxing any day of the week, but MMA, I'd need a full camp.
Yeah, but the muscle memory will come back, won't it? And obviously years and years of training, You just, I guess like anything, you can get a little rusty, right, if you're not progressively training it all the time, Yeah,
well, what's crazy is my career in MMA was like 5-6 years. I've only actually been doing Muay Thai, fighting Muay Thai since 2018.
Yeah.
So I've still got more experience in MMA than I do in Muay Thai. And boxing I only done this year. Obviously been training the whole time in martial arts.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter. When you get to this stage, you know what your fight style is, and you know that you're a fighter and a martial artist. And then that'll, you'll express yourself in different situations, but you have the essence is the same.
Yeah.
Like I know how to fight and it would come through however I'm competing, like you still have that same spirit. So
yeah, I can see how like the Muay Thai fighter comes out in you with that aggression and everything.
Yeah.
I can see why that would be well suited to you. So, I mean, a question is, why fighting? Why did you start with mixed martial arts or fighting in general? Karate, right? Was your first discipline?
So my parents met in Hong Kong and my dad was doing karate. So when they moved back here, because I was born in the Philippines, I flew in and moved over to England. My dad put me in karate when I was 8. And so I had that base, but I gave up when I was 14 and I was very rebellious and I kind of was just off the sporting radar from about 14 to 21. Well, I shouldn't say off the sporting radar. I played competitive hockey and I played for county. Like, again, just swinging sticks, like such an aggressive mid-right was my position, just all over the place, just chopping people. But
that makes sense.
Yeah. But I didn't, from 14 to 21, I didn't do any martial arts. And then I got into boxing. So I had that base from my family. Like my dad obviously is a martial artist. He encouraged me to do karate. Yep. I did it to brown belt as a kid. It taught me a lot of discipline. It helped me manage my emotions. And then I had a really bad time when I was in uni, probably from the age of 14 to 18, I was pretty wild. And then I had a real dark time while I was at uni. And I started boxing in my last year. So I was about 20, 21. And I went to boxing classes and it just helped kind of remind me of that discipline and helped me make some really positive changes. So I used to do charity fundraising in uni and I'd go to different areas and we'd raise money for different causes, and my whole team and me got attacked by a gang. So and it was racial, so they called me a chinky and I went to court over it. And there was so many people involved that no one actually got prosecuted. So the first thing was I got attacked by a gang. Then something really bad happened, and then a third thing, my boyfriend actually attacked me. And it was pretty full on. Over the years, people have asked, and I've like skimmed over it, so I've never really gone into much detail.
Yeah.
But I basically just had 3 really disempowering things happen in a short space of time. And I remember just being like, the day after the worst incident with my ex happened, my room was trashed. I'd had to get his mum to come and collect him from my house. And I was just sat in this wreckage in my room, just being like, this is ridiculous. Like, I just needed to change something. And I remember like he'd brought some friends back and there were beer cans. I was like cleaning up the beer cans and like there was like spliffs everywhere. I'm like chucking them out. Yeah. And it was a real like, just sick of it.
Yeah.
Just realized I didn't have like a good, just wasn't in a good place. And then I just was like, I need to know how to defend myself. And that wasn't even my thought, like, not like I need to defend myself, but I just had the thought that I need to like do something. And then it was like, I looked up gyms and I found boxing. And then it was just I just became obsessed. It's just a rolling I just kind of, the more sessions I did, the more in control of my life I felt, and the more positive changes you make. Because to be a good boxer, you have to be disciplined. You've got to eat right, sleep right, and the effects trickle out into every other area of your life. So that's basically how it started. And I never did it thinking that I'd be a fighter. I just remember they used to have interclubs, and one of the guys like, oh, you should do the interclub, and I was like, no, I wouldn't do it. And after a little bit of just gentle nudging, I ended up doing an interclub, and there was, again, no girls. So it was like me against this massive girl, but I did really well against her. And I was like, oh, she was way bigger than me, and I beat her.
Yeah.
And then people had told me that I needed to do more. And then I just started training every day. And I trained like multiple classes a night. So the gym was an MMA gym. So I do like boxing and wrestling and capoeira. And then I had the idea to go to Thailand and fight. Just kind of took over. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. So from a position of obviously, feeling helpless and needing some, self-defense, but being empowered seemed to have driven that whole circumstance, of you finding it, Yeah,
100%. And I hear, sometimes I feel a bit of responsibility, like I should share more, because there's a lot of women out there that have had similar experiences.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
And as a coach now, and being into, obviously with my injury, looking at the big picture and kind of thinking about life after fighting, I'm in a kind of different mental space. And so I have had a lot of people talk to me more openly about, why they're training, or just the people that, I end up speaking to have needed the same things I've needed, and that's why they've started training too.
Yeah.
Either to improve their self-confidence, or, they've got reasons that they want to, be able to defend themselves and that kind of thing. And so I am sort of, going through a process at the moment. So I started therapy even to talk about some of the stuff that's happened.
Yeah.
So it's been, and also to deal with just the constant, since COVID, it's mental health is always an important issue, but so many more people are dealing with frustrations and, uncertain about, how things are, and just the isolation has made things so much worse for people, it's just been a natural thing. So with the injury and with the frustrations I've been dealing with trying to compete at this time, I started therapy, and then you end up going down these rabbit holes and examining why fight, like why do you fight, and looking at these instances. Obviously on paper it's really obvious why I started fighting, but there's so many other issues tied around it. So there was a time where I was losing, and it was almost like I was fighting for the wrong reasons. It's to make up for like past wrongs. Like I had all these horrible things happen, and when I was like fighting, it was a way of being like, oh no, that's, makes it worth it, or it's like makes up for it, but that shouldn't be how you fight. And then now that I'm older and wiser, and I've got a healthy relationship with my sport and with myself, now it's like, oh, when you win, it's because you've invested all that time in your self-development, and it's just kind of coming from it for a different space. If you asked me why I fight when I was younger, I probably would have been like, oh, I don't know if I'd have given you a meathead answer, but probably just because I enjoy it and I like to work on myself.
Yeah.
But now it's more than just lifestyle, and it's more than an identity that I can't get away from. It's just, I don't know, it's just part of who I am.
Yeah, it's an expression, self-expression.
It's an expression. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I see martial arts in general, especially boxing and things like that, as an art
creative
form.
Yeah.
And I think it's because a lot of people don't see it that way, but I mean, it's something you work on day in, day out, and it's an expression of yourself and the way you fight. Like if you look at all the great fighters, they all fight in very individual ways, you know, like, and how they, like a Mike Tyson is just an absolute machine and a knockout artist, where you got like Muhammad Ali or something that can float around the ring and just do the things that he does defensively and has great power and attack, but they're all expressing themselves in that ring. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing to watch when you see somebody, especially when you understand it, I guess. Like I personally, I haven't fought, as like I've done certain boxing training and things like that, little bits, but I definitely wouldn't consider myself a fighter by any means. but I understand it from a visual point of view. I absolutely love it, especially boxing. I remember watching it with my old man, and David Tua used to be a New Zealand / Samoan fighter, a heavyweight that did quite well. You know, he was a knockout artist too, but I used to remember watching those and I was just fascinated by it, you know, and especially you got hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions, watching around. Then you've got the stadium of people, you know, watching for the entertainment, but you're kind of just glued into this ring like the whole time and just watching these guys just go at it like that, like two gladiators, you know. It's like from an olden days perspective of gladiators, like put into a modern perspective of like people are watching. It's an art form because people are attracted to it. And it's obviously it's entertainment as well because that's what sells it. That's what makes the big money fights. But it's just a beautiful thing when you see you see them setting up everything, or like a really intelligent fighter. When you can see that, I think that's where the art form comes into it. Yeah, because you can see the way they are fighting and they're setting them up to do this, and you're just waiting for that moment of where they just like crack them with like, you know, the right hand or whatever they have in their arsenal. And it's a beautiful thing to see, like wearing them down for 10 rounds. They're like, oh, he's getting the better, you know, like Canelo's always fighting and he's fighting all these weight classes and just beating everybody and going up and up and up in fights. And you know, to the untrained eye or someone that doesn't watch boxing, like, oh, this guy's actually beat him. You know, he's going to beat Canelo. He's just waiting and he's just biding his time that whole time, wearing them down, and then boom, cracks them in like the 10th or 11th round. And like that Caleb Plant fight that he just had, and Caleb Plant's a really good fighter, but that was, you know, amazing to see once again. He was putting up
just
a good
all
fight
over him.
Yeah.
I love how calm he is. That's the crazy thing. He's just has such a presence. Like it doesn't matter where he is. He's always balanced. He's always composed. And then those shots, the sound of the shots landing, like his body shots just sound so nasty.
Yeah. So, okay. So your fight, what is the date set now?
So the fight is December 10th. So that's Friday. That's a Friday, and it'll be in Newcastle.
So what? That's a month away. Less than a month. Yeah, 3 weeks. Yeah.
3 weeks. Yeah. All good.
Yeah. It's in there. Why not?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. In Newcastle. So do you fly out early for something like that? Do you like to train there? I guess like obviously when you're dealing with other climates, there's the altitude and things like that. Obviously, I don't think there's too much difference between Newcastle and here, but
they'll want us there for the weigh-in. So we'll normally go in on weigh-in day, and then we'll fly out the morning after. Yeah. So normally it's you go for the weigh-in, you're there for fight day, and then you'll fly out like just after breakfast, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fly out back here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like so you're there for a day or two, basically.
Yeah. If it was like overseas, you would be there to acclimatize for at least 5 days.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously it depends on where you're at. Obviously with promotions and things like that, there's sometimes promo and things to be done. Yeah. So yeah, there is the Gallen. Who's he fighting?
I can't pronounce it.
Is it? Oh, yeah, I think I did see it. Oh, anyway, it's all right. Yeah,
it's both days. It's Thursday 9th and Friday 10th. Yeah. And it's both fully played. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, righto. So with your MMA, like you said, was it a purple belt, did you say, in jiu-jitsu?
So yeah, the Brazilian jiu-jitsu level I've got to, I'm a purple belt, and I've competed, done comps and things. Yeah. But the last MMA fight I had was for one back in 2017.
Yeah, because you won a few of those fights by armbar, is that right?
So, no, I had 3 fights, 5 losses, and then I've won 1 or 2 by rear naked choke. I can't remember
that's right, 2. I think I saw 2. I looked at your record before, yeah. Yeah, 2 in a row, I think, with rear naked choke, wasn't it? Or that's the way they had it. It was 1 rear naked choke, 1 by decision, then another rear naked choke. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's well, I mean, obviously you're a very well-rounded fighter then in that regard. If I watched you fight, I would have said you were mainly a striker. Like that's what it looks like. I'd love to take it, but I guess I'll explain though. When I was fighting MMA in the early days, the level, so early on in my career, it sounds good that I've got a rear naked choke, but again, like it's against someone early on in their career. Yeah, okay. And then you're going up the ladder. So when I got signed to one championship, I thought I had a good level jiu-jitsu because, I'd had some wins by submission. I did some local comps, but then you go against Angela Lee, who's been training since she was 4 years old and is a NAGA champ. And so then you get twisted. So it brings you, it's humbling. There's nothing more humbling than martial arts, like one person versus the other one, and,
that's when I went back to the drawing board, started competing. I was a blue belt at that time, and then got my purple belt in 2018. But like I said, I haven't been consistent because, I mean, I've had just so many Muay Thai fights that I've kept my hand in, but it hasn't been, my training hasn't been as consistent and like it would be for a Muay Thai fight camp when you're training twice a day. Yeah, it's just too hard to stay on top of it, unfortunately.
Yeah, have you got one discipline that you like the best? Is that Muay Thai?
Muay Thai. I really miss kicking. I got to be honest. Like, I really like boxing. The boxing fight was so much fun because after the fight, I was like, I can feel my legs. I know that's a dumb thing to say, but after a Muay Thai fight, your shins, you can't walk. Like, even if you won the fight, because you've been throwing kicks, they've been blocked, or not, you're normally so sore. Can't put your elbows on the table because your elbows are sore because you've elbowed people. And then after the boxing fight, I felt pretty fresh. Like, I know I got punched in the face, but not that much. So, Yeah,
and you're checking kicks and things like that as well.
Muay Thai's brutal, but I just love it. And I would really, really like the opportunity to fight for a world title at some point. But again, I haven't fought since May. And then with COVID, there's been so many false starts that I feel like, I don't know. Just boxing's the direction has led me into boxing, but definitely Muay Thai is still my favorite. Like, I miss kicking. So when I'm hitting pads and everything else, and it's just hands, I haven't actually thrown any kicks because when you've got the boxing boots on and someone's in front of you, not calling, we do freestyle too. So like, they just hold the pads and they have to guess what you're throwing. You just box, but I guess if you're really, really under pressure, you go back to what you know. And there's one of our pad guys is huge. So I'm like 5'2". This guy's like got to be like 6'4". I don't know. And he's massive. Like, you can throw everything at him and he won't even flinch or move. And so we were doing pads the other day and I was a bit tired and he's coming at me and I went to teep him and we both looked at each other and I was like, I'm so sorry. But that was just because that's the only time it's happened where like I've actually gone to teep. Because people ask me that all the time. They're like, when you take a boxing fight, do you ever want to like shoot for a takedown or elbow someone?
If you're so used to it, the temptation there and the muscle memory to want to throw that to keep the distance as well, keep them away from you. You've been in a training camp when you solidly just trained one style. And then I think because each style has a different stance and a different, like, in MMA, you've got the small gloves. In boxing, you've got the shoes. In Muay Thai, you've got the big gloves. It kind of grounds you into that style a bit too, as well as obviously having the full camp behind you. But yeah, I did wonder on the 12 days notice one, like, what if I throw a knee? Anyways. Well, as I saw as well, when you're fighting some of the ones I've watched, your knees are pretty brutal as well. They seem to be a go-to.
They haven't been the most natural for me, but I've worked on them. So when I have had some good knees in a fight, I'm like, yay.
You like to throw them,
they're coming through.
Because I guess like Muay Thai, like you're in the Thai clinch is like a lot as well, right? Which is close quarter fighting, and then so that's where the knees come. Does the knees more of attacking or a break, like to try and break free from? You can the clinch.
Throw them at different times. Like if you are at distance and like you're in punch range, you can throw like a far away knee, like a spear knee. But if you're in the clinch, you're moving the person like you're steering a bus. And if you move them one way, your knee on one side. You move them the other way, your knee on the other side. And you've got to be. You've got to, be dominant and show that you're winning. Because if you knee and someone takes it and they don't fire one back at you, like it doesn't score well. It doesn't look good. So you need to be constantly, if you're in the clinch, you need to be constantly moving your opponent and kneeing to score. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And so you had, you said you trained in Thailand, right, as well? Like, so how long were you over there? Or were you just going over different fight camps or? So
the way that it happened, initially, when I left the UK and I hadn't had any fights, my whole plan, like I said, was that round the world trip. So my first stop was Bangkok. So I went to Thailand, Philippines, back to Thailand, actually, then Australia. And so before my MMA career, I traveled throughout Asia. And in Thailand, I was living in a Thai camp in Bangkok and then Phuket. And I spent 2 months and then 3 months there. And I had 2 fights at each camp. And then when I was in the Philippines, I was actually doing weapons training. I was doing their national sport called arnis or eskrima. Okay. So, Muay Thai is Thailand's national sport. and arnis is the Philippines national sport, and they teach that in schools. So that's stick fighting.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I think I've seen a few videos of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Teaching at school, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, anything that you do with a stick, which is meant to represent the sword, you also have to be able to do with your hands. So they have different movements. And so, if you're using a stick, it's still mimicking the movement of a sword.
Yeah.
And then if you have, you've got to be able to do that with knife, with a gun. I'm not too good at gun. I haven't had that much practice with the gun side of things. In fact, I shot the roof in a range in America, and Cowboy told me he wasn't taking me hunting because he thought he was a bit scared I might shoot someone in the back of the head.
Yeah, that's probably fair. Those ranges are wicked though, hey?
Yeah, they're pretty crazy. I mean, the ranges are amazing because they've got so many. They'll just ask you do you want the semi-automatic rifle?
Yeah.
Do you want the latest breed? And they just let you have it.
It's like, should you really let me loose with this thing?
Evidently not in my case because I shot the roof, but...
It's funny when you walk into, I did a range in Vegas, and you can see where all the shots are. You're like, how did somebody shoot up there when the target's there?
That is my story.
The scope was off.
The scope was off.
How far was the range though?
Like straight up.
You really need a scope at a range?
Yeah.
Was it from here to the wall over there away?
Pass.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Hey, I shot, I just blanked on it. We shot 45.
Glock?
Yeah.
It's like I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I'm like, Glock?
Desert Eagle. Desert Eagle, which was cool.
Beretta. I did a Beretta. What else
9mm, yeah.
What else did... I had a Glock, a Beretta, a semi-automatic rifle. I think there was probably a couple more.
Yeah, what else did we... Yeah, P90. Yeah. It's like automatic. It's just like... And it's just like the magazine's just gone straight away. It's really awesome, man. I'm blanking on it. The sniper rifle, 50 cal sniper rifle. We had a shot with that.
Yeah.
That was wicked. That had some kickback on it.
Were you a natural? What were your markings like?
I was all right. I've hunted a few times, but nothing much. What
were you hunting?
What's that? Oh, when I was in New Zealand, just a couple, but that was really I went out with friends,
just the local boar in Blenheim, or
you had to say that, didn't you? Yeah, we spoke before the show, and Nat, the one place she went to in New Zealand happened to be the small, tiny town where I'm from, Blenheim, New Zealand, represent.
Yeah.
Wine country. Yes, the whole 40,000 people that is there. I can't believe you went there of all places.
Well, my auntie moved there and there works at this vineyard. But yeah, they have a real nice lifestyle. They'll go fishing, share it out, shoot a boar, share it between all the neighbors.
Yeah, the fishing's good in New Zealand. That's what I was more of a fisherman than a hunter, but I went out a few times. But yeah, a lot of my mates, they hunted just with dogs. For the boars, so that's a different experience to hunting with a gun.
Oh no, I don't know how I feel about that.
The dogs, they got the grab dogs that grab on them, and then they go and slit the throat and stuff. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
It's a lot more primal, I guess, than shooting with guns. That's for sure.
I guess there'd be similarities with fox hunting in the UK.
Yeah, for sure. Except for probably foxes aren't quite as vicious as. I suppose they probably could be.
I mean, they use dogs to hunt them.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And the people that do them are on horses.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's different.
Yeah.
It's almost cheating. No, it's not really. I guess it's just a way of hunting.
I haven't done it.
Yeah. It sounds like a very English thing to do. So yeah, you said you're quite in touch with your Filipino roots. Is it the same with the UK or?
Yeah, it is. It just, because I was raised in England, my accent, although it's been Aussified now, it's normally quite strong. I feel like I don't have to represent my English side because it's obvious.
It's just there, yeah.
So when I went to the Philippines, I'd met family on holiday trips, but they were always short, a couple of weeks with the rest of the family.
Yeah.
So it's a whole different experience of finding out my roots of actually living with my relatives, living in the shanty town, washing my own clothes, after coming from a really Western upbringing in England. And yeah, it was totally different experience. And, the arnis gym that I trained out of didn't have a fully, it wasn't a nice normal gym, that's got painted walls and everything. This was in the market, and the shooting range installation was just wooden crates and sandbags. And, it was pretty, pretty bare basics, but it was amazing. There was just one guy there, this grandmaster, that just waited for students to turn up. He's like nunchucks, like Aikido, karate, boxing, would teach whoever turned up a style.
Yeah.
And so that's like an experience that you can never have. I could never have planned a holiday like that. I only found out those things by living there and going out and reaching out to my relatives. But obviously being raised in England, like I didn't have to go through that whole process because I was just raised in England. But I'm from the Southwest, so I'm a bit of a country girl. And like the West Country, like they're known for their cider, and they like more like it's just, I don't know how to explain it really. Like Cheltenham is where I'm from. Cheltenham town is in Gloucestershire, and it's just like a little southwest town, southwest of England. Not much is going on there. It's only really famous for like the races once a year. So all the Irish flow in, they have like horse races. Typical English girl, like scones.
Scones.
Like tea.
A cup of tea and scones.
Yeah. That's, West Country girl, like my cider when I'm not in fight camp.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Yeah, I've got an apple I'm showing Dan that my friend actually tattooed on me, which was pretty cool.
Pretty good job, actually.
Yeah, it's like an etching. But the story behind this tattoo, so before I left England, I was going through all the stuff that I mentioned before, leaving all that stuff behind. And me and my friend made this pact that we were going to like change our lives.
Yeah.
And she wanted to have her own tattoo studio. And I was like, I'm going to go abroad and become a fighter. And the next time we met up, she had her own tattoo studio and tattooed me. And I had got signed to one championship. So we did it.
That's wicked.
Yeah. So that was really heartwarming to be able to do that and go full circle.
Yeah. So, I mean, is your family still over there? Or?
Yep. So I've got family in the Philippines and in the UK, but all my my closest family, my parents and my sister, are in the UK. And I'm such a family girl. I never planned to be away from them this long, but I got to a point in my career even where I was like, I couldn't go home until I made it. Like I felt like I made such a big thing of like becoming a champion that I was like, well, I'm not going to come home until I've got the belt, become a world champion or got signed to UFC or done what I set out to do. And then 10 years later, it's like, well, now I've lived my whole adult life in Australia and I'm still on the journey.
Yeah.
And it's like, I wouldn't just call it, like, you don't just call it out of the thin air. If you're still on the journey, it's like a natural. So, what's that saying? Life is what happens when you're making other plans. Like it never, my whole plan to become a champion, everything else hasn't happened in the time frame that I wanted to or looked anything like I thought it would.
Yeah.
But, I wouldn't change it for the world. You still don't know where you're going to end up.
Yes.
If you asked me like a month ago if I'd be fighting a rematch, I wouldn't even know. I'd be able to tell you.
Title, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just life's a journey, right? And you sort of go with the flow of it rather than fighting it. You tend to have good things come your way, like what's happened. I mean, obviously, so you haven't been back with pandemic and things like that, but have you seen them? So has it been that long since you've seen them?
So the last trip was actually amazing. So in 2018, I went home and I managed to fight in Ireland and see my best friends get married. So I haven't been home since January 2019. So definitely due to see them. And I'm hoping that I'll have a chance to go home next year.
Yeah.
After a really good year, after all my losses in MMA and going to Muay Thai and winning, nationals and grading to purple belt, I felt like my life was on a big upswing. And then I got this opportunity to fight in Ireland because I was going home anyway. And I thought, I'd go back for a decent amount of time. So I was there back in Europe for 2 months. So I flew back home, but I didn't see my family until after the fight because I didn't want to break camp and focus. So that was so hard after all that time away. I flew to London, stayed with my sister and prepared for this Muay Thai fight in Ireland. Some girls that I met in the States were actually in Rome. This is just crazy fight life. Yeah. My friend was sponsored by Monster. And so we got flown to Italy to help her with her camp. So for part of my Dublin camp, I did in London and Italy. So it was like and I'd come from Australia. So it was just an amazing trip where I had these random opportunities came up. I went to Ireland, won my fight in Dublin against the hometown girl.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Bet
so
that
cool.
went down well.
You were like, let's get out of here.
Yeah, let's not go to the pub after this.
Yeah. Well, the best thing about that is that my mum's never watched me fight, and my parents haven't actually, because I never fought in the UK. They saw me do one interclub before I left on my travels. My mum actually flew in to watch me, and I was like, I didn't think she'd want to watch it live because she only ever watches my fights when she knows the results and knows I haven't got hurt.
Yeah.
But it was the first fight my mum watched, and so it was really special. My sister flew in, so I had my sister, mum and dad there for the Ireland fight, and I was just thinking, I think they helped me get the win. I was like, I can't get beat up in front of my mum.
No.
Like, I'm not going to make her cry. Like, no way. So yeah, that was so much fun. And then when I went back, I was holding out because you always want more as a fighter. You want to push. And I was hoping to get a second match when I was back in Europe. But it didn't happen. And it was around January time. And I was like, you know what? I really want to just enjoy the end of my trip. And my friend had a wedding. And so I watched her get married and then flew back. So it was just, amazing. Won a fight, went to Rome, and saw my friend from school get married.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's obviously really cool to be able to go around the world doing something that you love doing. Like, so America, Italy, Philippines. You've been around quite a bit.
Yeah.
Thailand, yeah.
I'm so lucky. But that flexibility and that sacrifice has come at a cost. But yeah, I wouldn't change it for the world. It's been amazing. And it's been, bless you. It's been quite hard to kind of manage, to juggle, because I've been a self-funded fighter. So I've always worked multiple jobs as well as fighting. But yeah, somehow made it work over time. And just, managed to go to some really cool places. The only thing I didn't mention actually is I did some training in Holland as well. So when I was back in the UK, went to Amsterdam.
Yeah. Heavy, the great kickboxers, obviously.
Yeah, it was so much fun. I didn't stay there too long, but I mean, there's so many amazing places that I'd love to still go and train at.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll just see what happens.
Is that what you were doing there? You were doing kickboxing, or were you just?
Yeah. Yeah. So I ended up training at Mike's gym. Yeah. Which is a famous gym.
Yeah.
In, I want to say, Amsterdam. Yeah.
But
I was living in, where were we staying? I'm going to pronounce it wrong, but Eindhoven. Anyways, yeah.
So it was I can't correct you because I have no idea, but I'm sure someone could.
Yeah, it's probably some Dutchies that are like, she's butchering our name. The name, yeah. Anyways, but yeah, so cool. It's been fun.
So you see, obviously you've got a great camp now that you have on the Gold Coast with John Wayne Parr and his wife and everybody. Do you see yourself staying there, training there constantly? Don't see yourself, there's no need to change a thing that's working for you, right? But that's where that's your gym now. 100%.
So I've been doing this a really long time, and when you find something that works, you don't leave. But it's more than that. It's to do with obviously consistency, but also loyalty. So the people you train with and you spend your time with become family. And like, we really do see each other at the high and lows of life all the time. So like, training twice a day, if you look at it as a job, then you could consider them colleagues, but they're not. It's so much more than that. Like, it's such a lifestyle that we see each other twice a day for training. On the weekend, someone's always fighting, so you're always seeing each other for fights. It's just, you can't escape each other, and we're really close. And you wouldn't be able to spend that much time with people if you didn't have love and appreciation for them. But I just have no need to go anywhere else. I actually got offered a partial sponsorship to a gym in Thailand, and I had thought, originally, this was maybe about a year ago, like, do I go to Thailand? Because this is when I was trying to build up my Muay Thai, but I have everything I need here. If I go to Muay Thai, go to a gym in Thailand, you're just another number in the gym, and you're building those relationships with trainers and training partners all over again. And, I wouldn't do that when I have that on my doorstep.
Yeah.
And what's amazing about Boonchu now is that they have opened up BJJ classes and MMA classes. So there used to be a pure Muay Thai gym, and Wayne has really good boxing, and Angie's boxed as well. So they obviously offered that as well. But now they have MMA coaching, and also Daniel Almeida, who's a very highly ranked competitor and Brazilian black belt. So in terms of like even making a comeback for MMA, like I can do that at Boonchu. I don't have to go anywhere else.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And, you know, there's a good girl squad. Yeah.
That you have down there to train against. Yeah, that's great. Well, that's wicked. I look forward.
You have to come and visit and do some training.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, because you've done like obviously that's MMA. Is it the XFC that you've done down there, or?
So XFC was the show I was on in May. I'm getting punchy, like all the months. So I have to think about that one. I was like May. So that was an MMA card, but it was really cool that they wanted to showcase Muay Thai, and my friend Ali fought on that card, and me and Erin were the headliner. Super tough fight. I lost that one, but that's okay. It was a really, really good fight. And yeah, the next fight after that was the boxing.
Yeah.
But yeah, XFC, there's so many good promotions on the coast.
Yeah.
There's lots of opportunities to go into MMA. Yeah, because
I've gone down there once before to watch. A mate of mine was fighting in the XFC.
Yeah.
Was it
Eternal?
I'm not sure. Now I'm blanking on his name. Anthony McDaniel.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no. No, I'm not too sure. Yeah.
I think he lost when I was down there. I think, what else was it? Oh, yeah, they had because I was in the Thor Ragnarok movie, like, you know, just extra whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But they're having the after party down there that night as well. So, it was pretty sweet. Like, I had a drink with Tessa Thompson. Like, she's in one of the leads in the movie.
Oh, so good. So what was your part?
I was just an Asgardian in the background.
That's pretty cool.
It was one of the first bigger ones that I did down there. It was an absolutely amazing experience. Like, probably like 3.5 months probably on set, I think, is like, which was really cool to see the guys like Chris Hemsworth and Idris Elba and Taika Waititi, all those.
Did you see them on set?
Yeah.
That's so good.
It was amazing to watch. Like, it was just what really showed us and why the movie was so fun and great to see was because Taika Waititi is like a real fun-loving guy and jokes around, like quite a comedian.
Yeah.
And like it just seemed to gel so well with Chris and Tessa, and they were just like the flow of everything was just they were having fun and having a good time, and that's why I think that movie was so successful as well. That kind of rejuvenated the Thor universe, or the Thor movies franchise, because I think they were already they'd done maybe 2 or 3 at that point. So it was kind of like, it was just wicked. I mean, obviously, and Taika Waititi's doing so well since then. He's getting all these movies. So that's great. But it's wicked. That's the best part about going on those sets, other than awesome people that you're working with and cool costumes, and you get to see how it all happens, with the big movies with the big budget. But getting to see those guys work is the best thing. And like Jeff Goldblum, I remember for a full day, I was like watching him improvise the whole time, like, this whole
taking
scene.
Notes.
Yeah, it was just wicked to see him work like that, and just the way he was working with the director as well and the other actors in there. It's just, you learn a lot from it if you're if you're attentive and you watch. So as I'm sure it's like watching fighters as well and things like that, you pick up little things here and there.
Well, even thinking about what I've seen on set, like when I was lucky enough to be, doing extra work and stuff for Young Rock, when I was watching the fight scenes, it was amazing to see like the stunt choreographer, like directing the actors, and they'd redo it. And then, the way they joke with each other in between, like in season 1, they had the Royal Rumble. So they had the big showcase where they had like all the old wrestling greats, like Andre the Giant, Ric Flair, like the Wild Samoans. And it was so cool seeing how, because obviously for me fighting and then you've got like stage combat, it was interesting to see how they how it transfers, or like, the angles they shoot and like the tricks they use. So I was like, I was keeping an eye on that. That was interesting to see.
It's a lot different, isn't it, though? Like with more wild swinging punches to get the angles right on the screen for it to look like it's hitting, but it doesn't. And just the way they sort of do it, it would be it'd be interesting from a fighter's perspective seeing that. It's funny because I'd love, like we said before, the podcast, like stunts is something I would love to go into. And I hadn't sort of thought about, how it translates like into stage. But I was speaking to a stunt guy and he was saying, there's all these different areas like vehicles, fire, animals, there's 5, right? Body combat, and then what's the other one? There'd be like heights, wouldn't there be as well?
Rigging or whatever they would call it.
It's a huge part of it. But it just sounds like
like really fun Pandora's box of stuff to go into.
Well, especially someone with your background, you know, and obviously being very active and fit and wanting to, you know, be competitive and all those sort of things.
Yeah, I was going to say glutton for punishment is the wrong thing. Let's just go with durable.
Yeah, durable works.
Yeah.
It's a good thing to have as a fighter, obviously.
Yeah. And I started riding a motorbike as well, so that would kind of work into vehicles. But then I actually spoke to a stunt guy and he's like, well, every time you're practicing stunts, you've got to wreck the vehicle. So it's really expensive to get into. So you're like going to wreck a car, like practicing.
Yeah, I don't know how they go about that. Like, especially in films like where they use those, you know, like an Aston Martin, in a Bond film, like how many like cars they actually go through, or a Fast and Furious movie more like. Like all those things. You wonder how much like a lot of it's CGI as well, but I guess it's pretty hard to make and let it look real, like of those things crashing and everything like that. So yeah, they probably do wreck a lot of them.
I guess you'd probably, rather than show somebody, you'd hire a driver to do.
Yeah, generally, those stunts,
and then you'd have to recreate the crash unless it was CGI. Whether or not you'd have someone in there or not, I don't know. Yeah,
it's amazing what they can do, but it's obviously with CGI, it's a lot easier. These, I mean, back in the day, they probably did wreck a lot of cars, or they didn't have the budgets too, so they probably kept using. I remember some Robert De Niro film, I can't remember who it was. It might have been the director on Rogan, and he was talking about how they, because they didn't have a huge budget back then with the cars, so they'd have panel beaters on set, and they would like work in the night to panel beat these cars, and there might have only been one or two cars that they could use for the whole entire shoot, and these cars were getting absolutely wrecked and getting fixed up all the time.
That's crazy.
Yeah, when you think about it like that. But yeah, I think the cars are definitely something people, I think they specialize in certain areas as well, so they will obviously get brought onto the films because they're known for being good in certain areas. So, but yeah, the pay for a stuntie is pretty awesome. I've seen what some of them. Oh, it's ridiculous. Like, well, it's not, because they're putting their body on the line. They've trained for this for many years, you know, and hurt themselves as well. I'm sure the insurances are pretty damn high for that sort of thing. But yeah, they definitely get paid very well. I know that much. Like been on set for them when we were on Aquaman. So I was in a scene like playing a Russian submariner. We get killed straight away in this scene.
I love the randomness of like acting. It's just you know, as you do. But go on.
As a Russian, and I'm a Kiwi. But so like we're in one of the main, like the opening scene, sort of opening fight scene of the film, where the guy comes in and he like kills everyone in the fight cockpit, which we are still playing dead the whole time. But we were on that for several weeks of just in that scene of Jason Momoa was in there. It's like his opening scene where he's like killing beating up all the pirates and these submariner pirates, kind of whatever you want to call it. But they were all stunties, and so they got rigs going everywhere, and they're getting
through
flown.
windows.
I
want to do that so bad.
The screen, the rooms into us, like into the chairs. Like there's a lot of interesting moments when we were doing it, but just some of the punishment that they were getting thrown against doors. Like one of the guys gets his head slammed into the periscope thing. Like it's pretty crazy. But getting to see them work and what they were doing and how that all works, and like it's crazy how realistic it is. And I mean, like, just they would take out the panels of some of the submarine panels of the cockpit, like,
so they can go through them.
Oh yeah, bring in the dented ones, you know, for this scene, like just replace whole pieces. Like it's crazy how it all happens. But yeah, he's fucking up like 12 different pirates, I think, in that whole scene, and just crazy things that just wicked to see. But you see that fun nature on set. Like you see it, like obviously where I'd say Jason Momoa is a very liked guy on set because he's just so chill with everybody. Like he was in there just like rapping like this ASAP Ferg song, like in between takes, and they were all like joining in and stuff. It was pretty cool to see. But yeah, such a nice guy, and like it's just wicked to see the behind the scenes of how they are, you know, because you never know like what they're really like. But you definitely see the ones that just keep to themselves and just fall stale faced, and like they'll go off to their trailer like in a heartbeat as soon as they've stopped filming, come back, you know, all the time. And you see the ones that I mean, you hear stories of people that are nightmare to work with on set and things like that. But I'm sure some of the stars are like that. But then again, they're under so much pressure to carry these big budget movies as well, and you want to stay. Everybody's so different with how they approach acting or approach anything in life, right? Like some people are just in the moment and just do whatever and just can roll like that, but some people need to be, in themselves, grounded, and the way they approach it. They don't really want to be messed with by everyone. There's so many moving parts when you're on set of people running around, changing things and makeup and set decoration and all that sort of thing. So it's quite chaotic. Yeah.
I haven't seen any divas on the Young Rock cast. They were all awesome. Like all the wrestlers, they're having a joke with, the extras and the team on the ground and everything. And yeah, they just seemed like a lot of fun. Like the Wild Samoans were hilarious. It was just, and then obviously The Rock's played by 3 different people, throughout the ages, and his dad, I can't remember the name of the actor, but he was awesome. He's always like so jovial, always cracking jokes, and because some of the scenes are so demanding. So like doing these wrestling scenes over and over, but it was like always in a good mood about it. And, you get up, like fake a bad back and stuff. And it's good crack.
Yeah. Samoans and Islanders in general are always pretty fun loving.
Yeah.
Like most people, I know a lot of guys from back home and stuff like that, and they're always cool, great to hang around with, like always a good laugh.
Yeah.
They're so intimidating, obviously, too. They're huge guys, but they're the most fun loving, really. I suppose you just don't want to piss them off, but yeah. But yeah, it'd be cool. I mean, I guess like wrestling in general, obviously, it's I think we're not cracking any secrets here, but it's like orchestrated and it's kind of choreographed, in general as well. So I'm sure that really translates well, getting stunt guys to do all that sort of thing. And were they actually wrestlers or were they actors or stunt guys like most of the time?
Some of them were wrestlers, but most of them were actors that were being instructed by the stunt choreographer, who is an ex-wrestler. Yeah, so that was cool to watch.
Yeah, that is really cool. Yeah.
But yeah, they would kill you for saying it was orchestrated.
Yeah, I know.
Didn't say the F word.
I've just been quiet about it.
But real wrestling and also the WWE style wrestling, they're both, you have to be insane athletes for both of them.
So demanding, yeah.
But it's interesting how that's become a thing where they talk about the F word, because like they feel. Well,
once again, it's an art form though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like it's a self-expression art form. So yeah, I mean, I shouldn't really call it that, but it's like. I
enjoy watching. I mean, I was never a WWE fan.
I remember watching it as a kid a little bit.
Yeah, but I have so much respect for wrestlers in general, and I've trained in America, and anyone that's wrestled in high school is just a weapon.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it's probably the hardest part of my training camp in America is training with the wrestlers.
Yeah.
And there's no way that stuff is fake.
yeah. Oh no, not the actual wrestling. Yeah, I only meant like the WWE style of wrestling and stuff. But yeah, like I say, I mean, so is acting, you're like kind of faking it, but you're in the moment with things as well, so like the best feeling that I can personally speak from in my experience of acting is when you're in the moment and you don't even really know what you're doing. You're just doing a thing like with someone in front of you and you're feeding off each other, and like you're just totally in the moment and you're just like, whoa, we created, like we're faking something, but it's a real moment, within all that. And it's just capturing that on camera is some of the best scenes you'll see. But it's not, I remember watching it when I was younger. I didn't know that it was obviously a put on show, back then, but like guys like Rey Mysterio Jr. and like, I don't know, remember Hulk Hogan and all those guys back in the day. Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I didn't follow it then, but now, I don't know. It's definitely more an American thing that's kind of been adopted by Australia and England now. Like,
doesn't a lot of things though, right? It starts out in America and then the world sort of takes it on.
The weirdest thing that I saw England adopt was cheerleading. So one of my cousins was like, oh, she's a cheerleader. When she was at school, she was a cheerleader. I was like, what? Like, I didn't realize that was such a thing. But
yeah, it's a professional thing over in America, that's for sure. So even here, I think now a lot of people
got mega cheer, they've got comps all the time. Like it's huge here.
Yeah, I think they have it on ESPN a lot and stuff like that. Yeah.
I haven't seen it on ESPN, but the other job that I do, I work in a kids gym, and so it's 7 months to 13 years, and we have cheer on our schedule as well. Okay. So it's called My First Gym, and there's everything from like ninja, parkour, gymnastics, everything. But that's how I got introduced to it, because I was like, oh, there's like actual like full schools, like a pure gymnastics school. There's cheer schools. So, yeah.
So do you get into it? You get the pom-poms out.
I don't. There's coaches that do that.
Okay.
I did.
You pick them up when no one's looking?
Yeah, just on my lunch break.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we've got capoeira and we've got Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but we haven't brought any other martial arts in yet. But if they ever did boxing or, got bags, I'd do Muay Thai or boxing for sure.
Yeah.
Get some little ninjas going.
So is that what you do? You go on those areas?
I help manage it. So I'm assistant manager, but we have coaches and we've thought about bringing it in. It might still come in. But yeah, we've definitely got really good capoeira and Brazilian jiu-jitsu. But we haven't put the boxing in yet. So we'll see.
What ages did you say?
7 months to 13 years.
I thought that's what you said.
So up into 5 years, there's a flow from like baby sensory to what, age appropriate classes when they're working on their development milestones to more specialist classes like gymnastics and dance and things like that.
Yeah.
But it's really all the way through. So it's crazy. I wish there was something like that when I was a kid, because I did a lot of sports as a kid. I was doing a sport every day of the week. And I started karate at 8, but I was doing gymnastics and swimming and everything. But to have it all in one place, that's new.
Yeah, it's one thing that I think Australia does really well at, looking from the outside, and especially when I lived in New Zealand as well. Like they always have there's a lot of good funding here and a lot of good schools. Like you see why they have great athletes and they do well on like the world stage with Olympics and things like that is because they seem to have it very well, not drilled in, but they have the training academies for all these sorts of things and a good amount of funding to get like these things up and running and these athletes like into these different sports and finding their way at an earlier age, which is obviously a lot better when you can train early and bring it on later with the fundamentals and everything. But yeah, it's one thing that I just really noticed, like a lot of difference in sports, from New Zealand to Australia. I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they probably have things like that in England, right? As well.
No, well, I was going to say, obviously every country has their own favorite sports and focus on sports, and everyone does more sports when they're a kid, unless they have it as part of their upbringing and then invest when they're older too. But what I loved about Australia is nippers and the surf lifesaving and the culture, the sporting culture, like because of the weather and because of the Australian culture, it's so much easier, it seems, to get into to be athletic from an early age, and you get so much more opportunities to do sort of group sports. It's not as big as America because there's so much sponsorship and funding for things. But in terms of like Australians, I went to the IIS, for instance, the Australian Institute of Sport, when I was in Sydney, and we used to play this fun game where like you try and guess what teams they were from. So you see some like really tall kids and you'd be like, oh, basketball players. You see some, like really strong looking women and you'd be like, oh, swimmers, and I was there for wrestling. And it's so cool that they have like you're saying, amazing programs to get them ready for the world stage. But just as an outsider looking in, I think nippers and the whole, because we don't have crazy like ocean currents and things in the UK. Like the closest beach to me was a pebble beach and it was cold. No one really wanted to go to it. So just the whole
the culture around it.
Yeah, and just how in tune like Aussies are with the surf and the ocean. I think that's really cool. Yeah,
it's a wonderful thing to have right on your back doorstep, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I'm not very savvy. I'm not very competent in the water. Like I thought that I'd pick up surfing pretty well because I used to skate a bit and I wasn't too bad at it, but I found it so hard. Like I went out with my friend, we just went straight out the back and she'd be catching waves back in and I was just sat at the back the whole time, couldn't catch anything. So because of my shoulder too, it's not something that I'm
trying to boost yourself up on the board.
I'm kind of leaving it until at the moment. I'm just doing what I need to for my fight camps, trying not to do anything extra. So surfing, I've put on the back burner, and also aerial silks. So at the kids' gym, I don't go for the pom-poms, but we do have aerial silks. And because of stunts and things, before my shoulder injury was actually, I had a gymnastics coach and I was practicing salts and aerial silks, or like sort of novice level. But I was really liking it. And what was funny was, when I was on the silks, I could do leg tricks. I could do like the splits and things like that. But I couldn't do like pretty arabesque with my shoulder. I was like, oh, they must be just really tight. I can't seem to do these things and make it look pretty like the ballet dancers and the gymnasts. But it's because of my shoulder. So it was never stable enough for me to hold on and get into those positions. So it's funny how your body just adapts around it. Because I was just like, oh, I'm just really tight. It's like, no, there's a full-on tear in there. That's why you can't do that stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you feel it in training? Like, is it something that, I mean, you didn't want me to touch on this too much before. Yeah. Let's pass on that. Yeah.
There's certain things that I will avoid to not have it flare up.
Yeah.
And I'm getting good at knowing what those things are. So I know that I'm safe for Muay Thai and boxing, but MMA will be a bit of a journey back when I decide to, if I decide to go back.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. What is the main part of your training regime for boxing then, now that you've taken over and that's sort of the thing you're doing?
I guess it's skills development really, because it's also new. So I know how to fight. I know that I'm fit. I mentioned before that I hired a sports scientist that's looking at my strength for my sport demands. So in the gym, when I'm working with my coaches, we're trying to work on my like footwork, my stance. So I look like a boxer, my head movement, the game plan. So it's all technique based. That doesn't mean that I'm just doing technique and going through the motions. I'm doing some really hard sparring. And I think I'm sparring more now than I have done for Muay Thai, because for Muay Thai, I feel comfortable. So like if we're in the gym, well, I'm in the gym Monday to Saturday, and quite often I still go for a run on Sunday just because it's my lifestyle. I like to do something active. Yeah. But Monday to Saturday, in the evenings, we might do some rounds, light sparring. And on Saturdays, our big sparring day. But it's pretty like, easygoing, like very controlled, because we're all from the same team and you don't want to fuck up your partner because they need to train, you need to train the next day. But for boxing, because it's for a belt and because I'm really trying to get better, I've actually got a girl coming to spar me on Mondays. I go to Brisbane in the week to spar with a world champion, April, who's been such an amazing help. Her and her partner, Ben 10, who's also a fighter. Me, Angie and Jazzy recently have been going up to Brisbane to train with her. And just, her insight and her, help has been really, really good. And then me and Jazzy go at it pretty hard as well. So I would say I'm sparring a lot more than I would do. Like when I went to America, we would have small glove sparring, which was MMA, which is meant to be more focused on grappling. We'd have big glove sparring, which was more focused on striking because you had the bigger gloves. It wasn't meant to be as heavy. Yeah. And then you'd have live wrestling rounds. So you had 3 different types of sparring, live situations. And I guess the boxing that I'm doing now with the amount of sparring I'm doing is most similar to that intense training in America. So I would say I'd be really well prepared for this fight. Yeah. To the point that like it's stressful, like very stressful. Like I'm not afraid. I've talked about, the therapy and things that I would go through earlier, but a lot of the time it's not for athletes, worried about getting hurt. It's about performance, and it's always about performance anxiety. And you probably, with your guests and everything and people you've met in acting, spoken about it as well before, about that anxiety. Mm. And so that's something that I'm trying to manage. And the more you're exposed to something, the easier it gets. So the more hard sparring rounds I get, the more situations I'm put in where I feel pressured and challenged is only going to help me, in the actual fight. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, well, it's an interesting thing that you hear some of the fighters and stuff talk about now in the UFC, and like guys like Max Holloway and that, how they don't even spar anymore. I think when they've had, you think about how many wars Max had. Yeah. Wars. Yeah. Like, when you get to a point where you've had that many wars and you don't want to take damage, I can kind of see it. Yeah. And also they fight so regularly that I still think you need to move around with people. I don't know what their no sparring counts as. If they're doing partner drills or like 1-for-1, they must still be doing contact, obviously. But in terms of hard sparring, I can see why they wouldn't when they've had that many wars. Just looking at his last fight, do you need to ever take that kind of damage ever again? Yeah, and what he did to Calvin Kattar in the fight before. It's just,
He's had 2 real wars. Like I love Maxwell, always one of my favorite fighters. Him and Izzy, Australasian, But I mean, hopefully he's fighting Volkanovski. I think he won that last fight anyway. To be fair, but anyway, I like Volkanovski as well, obviously. But it should be an interesting third fight anyway. Hopefully that'll be made.
Yeah, fingers crossed. We'll see it.
Well, it must have been a bit of an adjustment going to the bigger gloves from using MMA gloves before as well, and Muay Thai as well. Because what are the ounce gloves that women fight with? Is it the same as males?
So for pro, when I have a Muay Thai pro fight, it's 8 ounce. I'm pretty sure it's the same for guys. Like it's just professional, 8 ounce gloves.
Yeah, okay.
I didn't really notice the difference. Like I haven't fought small gloves Muay Thai yet. So I haven't fought in the small gloves for a while.
Okay.
But I like fighting Muay Thai and boxing in 8 ounce. That feels nice because when I'm training in the gym, my favorite gloves to hit in because you feel fast and they're like close to your knuckles. They're nice and tight at 8 ounce. But when you're hitting hard, it hurts your hands. So you need to be hitting it like 10s or 12s at least. Otherwise, you'll hurt your hands no matter how hard you wrap.
Yeah.
Unless I hit just really hard.
The power's coming on.
Yeah, no, it's funny as I say that I can hear my trainer meowing at me. So like quite often my trainer will make a cat noise if it's weak, like meow, like I'm being awesome. A pussy. Yeah. And then or he'll vomit. He'll be like, "What was that?" Blah. Yeah. So yeah, it's just encouragement. Try better.
Honest.
Be better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, I've loved hearing your story and your journey so far, and I look forward to hopefully I'll be able to see that fight 10th of December.
Definitely.
Right. Check it out, guys.
Posted.
It's going to be on pay-per-view, I'm assuming, and hopefully your fighters too.
Yeah, well, it'll be on the Gallen card. If it's on the undercard, it might not be on pay-per-view, but yeah, it'll be December 10th, and it'll be on Fox Sports or KO.
Fox Sports?
Yeah.
Yeah, KO, Fox Sports, yeah. I've definitely got that. So, yeah, I should be able to find it. But usually I think they show some of the undercards, but maybe not the whole card, right? Yeah. But it's awesome to be on that pay-per-view. Nevertheless, like on the card fighting with that, it's amazing. And I'll definitely let me know when you got a fight down the Gold Coast or something, or up here, wherever. And I'd love to come down and watch. Yeah.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for having me on. And hopefully we won't do any more awkward auditions together.
Yeah. Well, hopefully there'll be better ones next time if we get paired up. Although there's not many of them in person anymore at the moment. So
all self-tapes.
I like the in-person ones, to be fair. Self-tapes are great, but I like doing the in-person ones.
Yeah, they're all just really random.
Yeah.
And I love it when they just throw, like you said, curveballs at you and they give you something really random to do, which was not what you planned for. And it's like they're just testing you to see if you'll play.
Yeah,
like,
if you can ad-lib,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, improvising is some of my most enjoyable parts of acting a lot of the times too. I know you don't always get to do it, but you do when you're playing classes and things like that. But yeah, it's fun because you can show off your personality a little more as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, Nat.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah. Righto, guys. It's us. We're out.